Welcome, Pewter Report readers, viewers, and listeners, to a brand new edition of the Pewter Report podcast, energized by Celsius, the official energy drink of pewterreport.com. It is a Wednesday edition of the show. We are in season, so if you are familiar with our podcast, thanks for continuing to rock and roll with us. If you're new to the podcast, our Wednesday show, when we are in season, is always a preview show, unless the Bucs play on a Thursday or a Monday. But they play on Sunday, and they're in prime time. So Wednesday is our preview show, as we will talk about the Bucs' next game against their upcoming opponent, which this week, it's a special one because it's against the Dallas Cowboys on Sunday Night Football. So there's going to be a ton of attention. Baker Mayfield goes back to his home state of Texas, where he won a high school championship at the Cowboy Stadium. I believe it was not this current one, but the one before that. Went to his first ever NFL game in Dallas, and of course has ties to the state and how close it is to his alma mater, which is not in the state of Oklahoma. But nonetheless, a lot to get to on today's show in this breakdown. I'm your host, Matt Matera, joined with me, my fellow colleague. He's usually on our Thursday show, but we swapped him in for Wednesday this week, Adam Slavon. Adam, how we doing?
Matt, doing great and excited to do another preview show with you. A couple weeks ago, did it with you when we previewed the Raiders.
That's right.
And now this week, playing the Cowboys, it's going to be a big game for the Bucs. You've kind of seen that must-win game alert on the graphic the past pretty much month. And Sunday's no different. It's going to be a must-win game for the Bucs as they head to Dallas Sunday Night Football. It's going to be a great game for them, kind of getting that national attention. They've got national recognition kind of across the board this week. But this game, Matt, definitely a must-win. And you kind of already see the Pewter people talking about it in the chat with the Falcons making a big move. That's something that we kind of want to start today's show off by talking about.
Yeah, you might as well get to it. If you want to super chat us, we will. We're happy to address whatever you want to talk about. So yes, our first super chat came from Michelle C. Thank you for the $5 super chat. Says, in reference to the playoffs, should we be concerned now about the quarterback change in Atlanta? So that was the big news that came out yesterday, kind of evening. So the news was still pretty fresh when we were all in the media room. Baker Mayfield got asked about it. Todd Bowles didn't, which now that I think about it, like, you would have thought that Bowles, I get it, because the question at the time for Baker was framed as like, oh, well, he's been in both of those positions of being the rookie, the young up-and-comer that becomes the starter, and then also the guy that, loses his job and then has to back it up. But Todd Bowles didn't get asked this. But nonetheless, the Falcons are benching Kirk Cousins in favor of former Washington and Indiana, but finishes college career in Washington. And Tampa native Michael Penix Jr. will be starting for the Atlanta Falcons, making his NFL starting debut. He may have gotten in some garbage time in other games, but
I think he did.
He'll be in there when they host the New York Giants. So, not the worst way to begin your NFL career with a team like the New York Giants. But Adam, what was your initial thoughts and reaction to that big move by the Falcons and how it impacts the Bucs?
Yeah, so at first, upon hearing the news, you're kind of surprised, right? Kirk Cousins, this established quarterback that's been in the NFL for a very long time, 36 years old now. He's been in a lot of games, played in a lot of big games. You're thinking, why in the middle of a playoff race with the 7-7 Falcons decide to move towards a rookie? Well, the Falcons played pretty bad on Monday night against the Raiders, barely scratched out a win. Facing Desmond Ridder, the quarterback they let go to make room for Kirk Cousins and Michael Penix. But from the start, you always kind of wondered in the background. You draft Penix 8th overall. You must really like him. And the decision to kind of play him now, you kind of want him to be that spark plug if you're Atlanta. The last 3 games down the stretch, the offense really hasn't clicked with Kirk Cousins all season. You take out the 2 games, Matt, that he played against the Bucs. Kirk Cousins' totals go from 18 touchdowns and 16 interceptions to 10 touchdowns and 15 interceptions. That's been bad quarterback play when not facing Tampa Bay. And so you can kind of rationalize it and kind of see the logic, because the Falcons offense, they still have Bijan Robinson, Drake London, Kyle Pitts. There's plenty of playmakers around Penix. Having a kind of a softball game against the Giants, they're still a capable defense, but it's going to be an easier matchup for him to kind of get acclimated than maybe facing a big juggernaut.
Yeah, when you have a good running game, that can help curtail a lot of things and really help a rookie quarterback making his his first career start. And we're not just talking about a good running game. We're talking about having Bijan Robinson, who I think already in his young career is catapulted to probably not a top 3 running back yet by any means, and certainly Bucky Irving is making his own case. But yeah, top 5 at worst, a top 10 running back, and you have a good wide receiver in London. Kyle Pitts, I still think, is very underutilized, and it's just I don't know if it'll ever work out there. But yeah, you mentioned that game against the Raiders on Monday Night Football, and yeah, there was a little more national attention because it's a primetime game. If that didn't directly impact the Bucs, I may have shut that game off. Like, it was so boring. The Falcons played like absolute cowards because they knew once they had a lead, Raiders offense is that bad that once they had a lead, they weren't going to give it up. And then they almost still gave it up. But Kirk Cousins gave them absolutely nothing. He's been horrible down the stretch. He's a nice guy, so I feel bad for him. But it makes sense that you're in a playoff push. And when you think about it, sure, the Falcons would like to win the division the same way that the Bucs want to win the division. But at 7-7, they're trying to catch the Commanders, and Commanders at 9-5. They play the Eagles next week, who clearly still have a lot to play for because they have the same record as the Lions and the Vikings. So one of those teams got to win the NFC North. So the Eagles are still playing for number 1 seed, even though they pretty much have the NFC East locked up. Yeah. And then the Falcons playing the Commanders the week after, that becomes a huge, huge game. So as much as we want the Bucs to win the division, the Falcons aren't totally out of it yet from a wild card perspective. So for another thing we got to factor in is, and I was a part of this group, we laughed at the Falcons for when they drafted Mike Penix Jr. at the time, because it's like, well, you gave Kirk Cousins all of this money. Why not get him another weapon? Or maybe they had an opportunity at the time to get an edge rusher, and as we've seen, their pass rush isn't really there. It ends up kind of looking like the right move now. Yeah. Because we'll see if, they keep Kirk Cousins next year, but clearly he's not going to be the answer for the next 5 seasons. And he's just regressed a lot. He can't make a lot of throws, and he can't move. So how much does it impact the Bucs? I don't know. Michael Penix is still a rookie. We saw how Jaden Daniels looked in his first career start against the Buccaneers. Bo Nix, it took him a couple of games. Ironically, his game against the Buccaneers kind of catapulted his own career. So you get the benefit of going up against the Giants, who are a bad team that are playing for the first overall pick. But at the same time, even if you beat the Giants, you have that Commanders game, and that's a big-time request to have a rookie in his now second career start with still not a ton of experience play in a huge, huge game with playoff implications. I think it makes sense to provide a spark and to get things going. And Kirk Cousins, at the end of the day, played his way out of this job because he played so poorly. So it's an intriguing move. I don't know how much it affects the Bucs at the moment, because the Bucs still just have to win out and they'll be fine. But it's certainly expediting the clock for a quarterback of the future that the Bucs will have to deal with in their division for really the next technically 4 seasons, because when you're a first-round pick, you have 5, but they didn't play Michael Penix this year. So it certainly impacts Tampa Bay moving forward. Maybe not necessarily this year, but definitely a move, no doubt, Adam, that rocked the foundation of the NFL football world last night when that announcement was made.
It did. And kind of building off your point there, Brian commented, kind of talking about the future of the Atlanta Falcons quarterback position, guessing Kirk makes the Falcons cut him and he pulls a Russell Wilson, plays on the veteran minimum next year while Atlanta plays his full salary. That could be a case that really plays out with so many teams across the league kind of needing a veteran quarterback. You look at the Giants, the Raiders, the Browns, there's going to be a musical chair of quarterbacks in the NFL draft to where Kirk Cousins might be available. And then, as you mentioned, Michael Penix really does become the quarterback of the future in Atlanta. just sooner than you expect, though, because you signed Kirk to this 4-year massive deal. You're thinking he's going to ride off into the sunset, rock his chains, get some playoff wins. Really didn't happen that way.
No, and we'll see with Kirk Cousins. Do you keep him on for one more year and just have a backup that you at least trust in terms of like NFL experience, and you eat that salary cap for one more year and then let him go? Because I was reading up on it. I think the Falcons, if they were to cut him in the offseason, they would still owe $27 million. But then after 2025, they would be done. So it's, it wouldn't totally kill the Falcons the way that, the Broncos are really hamstrung with Russell Wilson. But yeah, I mean, who knows? You could see Kirk Cousins go to a number of different places, maybe be a backup the way, I know he's not in the league right now, but the way like Ryan Tannehill became a backup, Jameis to a degree. And I know Kirk Cousins.
Joe Flacco.
Yeah, Joe Flacco's probably a much better example, just given the overall history and how long he's been in the league for. But yeah, I don't know if the Bucs totally closed on Kirk Cousins' NFL career. I think it is as a, full-time starter in his career. But, certainly big-time moves for the Falcons. It's interesting with the NFC South now as a whole, and we will get to Bucs versus Cowboys. Don't you worry, Bucs fans.
Yeah.
Because you look at the quarterbacks, you have Baker, who's in a great spot, and we'll talk about Baker momentarily because he got rewarded this week with a national award. You have the Saints, who they paid a big contract to Derek Carr, but how long is he going to stay around, especially with that injury history? And then you have two teams that have pretty much, at least at the quarterback position, hit the reset button with Bryce Young, who the Bucs will play for the second time next week, and of course now Michael Penix Jr. So a lot of big things to pay attention to at the quarterback position, specifically in the NFC South. But like I mentioned a moment ago, the Bucs are in a really good spot with their quarterback, because not only has Baker Mayfield been great this season, been better since he signed his 3-year, $100 million contract, but he was also given an award, at least the announcement was made today. He was named the NFC Offensive Player of the Week for his performance in the Bucs' 40-17 win over the Los Angeles Chargers. That included a 4-touchdown game. He was 22 of 27, over 280 passing yards. He had the best quarterback rating of the week. The Bucs put up a ton of yards, and remember, a ton of yards against the top scoring defense in the league. And Baker Mayfield, and this speaks to Liam Cohen, this speaks to the personnel on this entire team. Baker Mayfield becomes the third Buccaneers player and third different Buccaneers player to win NFC Offensive Player of the Week. You had Sean Tucker, of all people, in Week 6. Buck Irving quite recently in Week 13 in that win over the Giants. And now Baker with this performance. So, man, oh man, Adam, Baker Mayfield isn't just playing well. I mean, he's playing at an MVP level. I don't know if he's going to win the MVP. It looks like that's going to be wrapped up by Josh Allen, and understandably so. The Bills have a good have a good shot at, they may not get the 1 seed, but they just beat the Lions and pretty much have that 2 seed locked in. But what a role Baker Mayfield has been on.
Yeah. And you mentioned like the MVP race. Outside of Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, in a parallel universe, you look at Baker Mayfield's play this year, he's been an MVP candidate. The fact that he's thrown for 32 touchdowns this year, kind of really efficiently operated Liam Cohen's offense. You mentioned the fact that the Bucs have had 3 different offensive players win Offensive Player of the Week. It speaks to just Liam Cohen's ability to get his players in a position to make plays. And Baker Mayfield in LA, man, he should get like a little star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame the way he played at SoFi Stadium there. Just a really great game by him. And it speaks volumes that the offense really did it against the Chargers defense, the number 1 scoring defense in the NFL. But you kind of look at it, and across this 4-game win streak, Matt, the offense has played really great. But also shout out the defense a little bit too, because they kind of looked more like the Chargers defense than the Chargers did that Sunday. So credit to Baker. I know he didn't really want to take too much credit during his press conference today. And Bowles said, we just clapped at after practice and are moving on. But Mayfield's performance does deserve some praise.
Yes, it does. And, we can maybe go a little crazier than the Bucs players will. And yeah, that was a funny moment at the podium today. Todd Bowles had a lot of good singers this afternoon, but he was asked about, how the coaches keep their team hungry and with their eye on the prize despite having all of the success. And he said, we have a lot of sarcastic coaches that will, put the players in their place and not let them get too high or too low on something like that. And then later Bowles was asked about, how you go about like acknowledging and celebrating these nice moments, whether it's, Baker Mayfield or Bucky or, Mike Evans having a big game. And, he may win the FedEx Air Player of the Week, depending on how the voting goes and things of that nature. And yes, as you just mentioned, Todd Bowles was like, we announce it, everybody claps, and then we move on. And I think that's good. I think that's answer. Yeah, and I think that's the right way to go about it. Tom Brady obviously is very highly accomplished. Super Bowl rings, MVPs. I don't even know if you get like a trophy or whatever for NFC and AFC Offensive Player of the Week, but like
you might get a ribbon, the Amelia ribbon.
Yeah, he's not putting that next to his Super Bowl trophy.
Yeah,
like this NFC Offensive Player of the Week award is very nice. I doubt Baker Mayfield is putting it next to his Heisman. And I'm not trying to belittle the award because it is nice. Like literally nobody played better than Baker Mayfield last week. But you're also not going to sit there for days and get a tattoo. Like fans will get a tattoo that says like Bucs Super Bowl champion. They're not getting Baker Mayfield
week 15 player of the week.
Maybe some hardcore Oklahoma and Bucs fans would. But Watt had a comment. We have 3 offensive players of the week. Yes, just to reiterate, Sean Tucker week 6 when they scored 51 points against the Saints. Bucky Irving week 13 against the Giants when they won that game, and now Baker Mayfield for this one. So I think what's been so big with not just this game against the Chargers, and they were able to do everything. Like they did not punt the football. Baker had 5 incompletions in the whole game. And honestly, you really only had 3, or you really only had 4 because one of them went to the Chargers themselves.
Yeah.
But Baker is playing with such a comfort and relaxation. Maybe not a ton of relaxation because he is scrambling around from time to time. But he's got his pulse on the offense. Like he knows what the team needs at the right time. And yes, like he is. Looks like Mike Evans was just voted. Congrats to Mike Evans. This literally just broke. Mike Evans was voted FedEx Player of the Week. So look at that.
Not breaking news over here.
Yeah, more awards and accolades for Buccaneers players. Anyway, everything's clicking at the right time. And I know there's been some other games where we worry about what he's got to do. And, he had those turnovers against the Raiders. They had the turnovers against the Chargers last week. I think that's more of a second quarter thing than anything else. Like right now, the biggest issue with the Bucs offense is surviving the second quarter without a ton of turnovers. Besides that, they're moving the ball at will. Baker is firing on all cylinders. He's scrambling when he needs to. He's getting the job done. And, whether it's Baker, Mike Evans, Liam Cohen, Bucky Irving, everybody is playing their part and just making this Bucs offense look like a legitimate juggernaut.
Yeah, and you break it down in like the various elements. Like you look at Liam Cohen and his play calling. We did a roundtable this week of what makes the Bucs dangerous, like going into the playoffs. Should they make it? Liam Cohen's play calling, the Baker Mayfield's efficiency, his ability to make plays. You look at the run game. You look at Mike Evans. You look at the offensive line, and there's so many different elements that makes this Bucs offense really click, really fire. Like as you mentioned, on all cylinders. There's so many reasons to point to why the Bucs have scored so many points this year, but all of it kind of circles back to Liam Cohen and just how he's been able to get the most out of his players And then also Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield did this last year. He had a career year last year, but the fact that he's been able to build off of that and really emerge, we mentioned MVP contender, he's been a top 5, top 10 quarterback in the NFL this season. Just his play elevating with that play calling, like that's why the Bucs have been so successful this year.
Yeah, I agree. And keeping him upright, you mentioned the offensive line a moment ago, and they did such a great job against a Chargers pass rush that doesn't just have one guy. They had 3 or 4 and kept them at bay for almost all of the game, and they allowed just 1 sack. Now they have a different type of matchup, a very intriguing one, going up against one of the best pass rushers in the league. Talking about Micah Parsons of the Dallas Cowboys. Important to remember as well, like Parsons coming back from injury. He's been back for a couple of weeks. But they will not have Diggs, the very talented cornerback, as he's on season-ending injured reserve. He just had Trayvon Diggs. He just had surgery the other day on his knee and has a long-time recovery. But it kind of feels like in this matchup for the Bucs, I think on each side, offense and defense, the Cowboys have like a superstar, and no star, pun intended, to the Dallas Cowboys in that helmet. But it very much feels like if they can stop Micah Parsons, who can be a game wrecker, we've seen that before. If they can stop Micah Parsons the way that they were able to really shut down the Chargers last week, the way that they did not allow Max Crosby of the Raiders 2 weeks ago to completely take over the game. And Crosby certainly had some good rushes. But it very much, the focal point already going into the game was stop Micah Parsons from the Bucs offensive standpoint. But I don't know who else the Cowboys necessarily have that's going to give the Bucs too difficult of a time. Like, sure, they have talented players. But seeing what Tampa Bay just did to the Chargers, they should be able to do that again against the Cowboys.
Matt, I'm so glad you made that point when you were talking about how Dallas really has a superstar on each side of the ball. Because when I was kind of previewing and like going through notes or whatever, it kind of reminds me, Dallas looks like a higher floor Raiders team, right? Because the Raiders a couple weeks ago, they had Brock Bowers and Max Crosby. And while Dallas, they have more depth, they have more talent, like as a foundation. That's why they're 6-8 as opposed to the Raiders only having 3 wins. Dallas doesn't have a lot of game-changing players outside of Micah Parsons and CeeDee Lamb. Micah Parsons pictured there, I mean, you could do so many pictures of him. This guy is a menace, and the Bucs have faced a lot of talented pass rushers this year. Aiden Hutchinson, Nick Bosa, Max Crosby, the Giants front 7 filled with talented guys. Micah Parsons is probably the most talented of them all. Just his ability to change the game. Todd Bowles had a 1-on-1 kind of player comparison of him today when talking about who he reminds him of. But just if the Bucs tackles can neutralize Parsons, Luke Gedicke's only allowed 1 sack this year. Tristan Wirfs and what he does on a weekly basis. If they really neutralize their defense, because otherwise it's Jordan Lewis as their nickel corner. They have Eric Kendricks, who's more of a steady Eddie, kind of a Robert Spillane, sure tackler up the middle. There's not a lot there. They've lost so much star power on their defense that it's really going to be the CeeDee Lamb show. But how much will CeeDee Lamb be able to do with Cooper Rush's quarterback? He had a good game last week. There is some questions there.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And, we can't take anything away from what CeeDee Lamb does, as a very talented wide receiver. But, yeah, Todd Bowles, as you alluded to before, had quite a comical thing to say about Micah Parsons today. And you can see it on all of our social media if you want to check it out. But he's essentially asked about Micah Parsons, and the question was essentially, does he remind you, if you could compare him to, another player in the NFL, either historically or maybe someone that Bowles went up against or played with when he was in the NFL a while ago? And he just said that he's just a pain in the ass. That's what Micah Parsons is. He's a pain in the ass. It's not comparable to other people. He's just a pain in the ass as far as game planning and going to stop. And he said he meant that as the highest of compliments, but there's a little bit of that comedy and sarcasm and humor that Todd Bowles brings to the table. And it's interesting with the Cowboys, and we're talking about their offense. We can get into their defense in a little bit as well. It's interesting. Again, no digs for this game. So can you take advantage of the secondary? The Cowboys have won 3 of their last 4 games. They defeated the Washington Commanders 34-26 in Washington. Then they beat up on the Giants. They lost to the Bengals on that Monday Night Football Simpsons game. But then they beat the Panthers 30-14 in Carolina. So they had a better go of it against Carolina in Carolina than the Bucs did when they made the trip there a couple of weeks ago, having to survive in overtime. But you look before that, too, and again, injuries played a part. Before that game where they defeated the Commanders, they were on a 5-game losing streak. And in that span, and sure, it goes back to week 6, so we're talking about a pretty big sample size here. They allowed 47 points, 30 points, 27. All right, no, sorry. 40, 30, 27, 34, 34 again, 26, and then some of the winning streaks, 20, 27, and 14. So even in the games that they won, like they still allowed 20 points to the Giants, who don't have an offense at all. They allowed 26 points to the Commanders. It was just they were able to score points that game, and I think a lot of fluky things happened with turnovers and special team scores and things of that nature. It was really the Panthers last week allowing 14 points was the first time in quite a while that their defense showed up. But nonetheless, they've been able to scratch out some wins, and it very much feels like their success, they obviously have to find a way to put up points, but it feels like their success comes with obviously feeding CeeDee Lamb. But what kind of game do they get from their backup quarterback, Cooper Rush? And if Rush plays okay to average, and he's won some games previously, even before the season, the Cowboys can hang tough. But if he kind of plays how he did against the Bengals or some other starts, then there's really no way that the Cowboys can go toe-to-toe with the Buccaneers. But, how do you view the Cowboys offense outside of just, CeeDee Lamb balling out?
Yeah, I did want to mention, though, when you were talking about the Cowboys and the point totals that they've allowed to various teams this year, they're 0-8 when allowing 27 or more points this year. And you look at the Bucs offense averaging over that, that's kind of a recipe for success should the Bucs get to over 27. But you kind of look at the Cowboys offense, and you mentioned Cooper Rush. He's the worst ranked quarterback in the NFL by PFF this year. They have him ranked 40th out of 40 guys. And while he's kept the ship somewhat afloat, he's been 3-3 as a starter. He had his best game last week against the Carolina Panthers. But otherwise, Matt, he's a game managing quarterback who's really relied on Rico Dowdle, also known as a Gruden grinder. Him and Levante both got that award this week. But Rico Dowdle has been he's gotten the most rushing yards in the NFL the past 3 weeks. He's had 22 carries for 112 yards versus the Giants. He had 18 carries for 131 yards against the Bengals. And last week against the Panthers, he put on 25 carries for 149 yards. And this season, he's averaged 5 yards a carry. So you look at it, and he's been a very efficient running back who he doesn't rely on speed. He relies on power, making the line of scrimmage move. And he did all that last week, Matt, with only 2 offensive linemen for the Cowboys playing 100% of the snaps. They've been banged up. They relied on a backup center. Tyler Smith, he didn't play the full game. Neither did Tyler Guyton. He did all that with a banged-up offensive line. He might make some things happen on Sunday alongside CeeDee Lamb. So it isn't just Lamb that they have to neutralize. When I look at the Cowboys' offense in its entirety, Rico Dowdle's also, he's their second-best player. And if Cooper Rush can do just enough as he did against the Panthers, they still have the ability to put some points up.
Shows the importance of what have you done for me lately, because they have been able to tote the rock as of late. And maybe that's more of the opponents that they've gone against than, true functioning, running of the football, or being able to, I should say, because the Cowboys are still 26th in the league in running the football. averaging essentially 100 yards per game. They're at 99.8, where the Bucs, on the other hand, are a top 5 running team, getting at 144.4 rushing yards per game. They're actually tied for 4th with the Packers with the exact same number. And, even when they had Dak Prescott and the Cowboys were struggling, it was, hey, the Cowboys, they have CeeDee Lamb. That's about it. Their other wide receivers, okay. And Jake Ferguson's pretty good at tight end as well.
Yeah.
Brandon Cooks is certainly up there in age, but he can still be solid. But the biggest problem for the Cowboys is that they had no run game between Rico Dowdle and Ezekiel Elliott, who's essentially on his last legs. But the Cowboys have found something in the last couple of weeks. So it's good that the Bucs were able to shut down such a great running team in the Chargers the week before, because I had my concerns a little bit with how they looked against the Raiders. But, now we're seeing it was, more of the Bucs defense being able to put it together and just play better as a whole unit compared to what they have the first half of the season. So I think we'll get a further answer this weekend, or this Sunday night, I should say, about has the Bucs defense truly turned the corner? Because they certainly did against the Chargers, pitching a shutout. And the Cowboys, maybe not the toughest of opponents, but certainly improving on their offense over the past couple of weeks. So another good challenge there. I know anytime that I have a challenge in front of me, I want to be at the best of my abilities. And I feel like I'm at the best of my abilities when I have a Celsius energy drink, which, of course, is the official energy drink of pewterreport.com. We love Celsius for a number of reasons, including all of their great flavors. I love the Arctic vibe. Tropical vibe is great as well. So you can check out all their fantastic flavors over on the Celsius store locator on their website, like the sparkling watermelon lemonade that you see on the screen there as well. And when you're on the Celsius store locator, if you need to know where to find one, punch in your address. I'll tell you the closest location where you can pick one up. Could be a Walmart, a Piggly Wiggly, a Publix, a Stop and Shop, or your bodega.
Bodega.
And after you keep going to your bodega, you love Celsius and you want more, you want to buy it in bulk, you can purchase it on Amazon with the subscribe and save. I'd recommend the variety pack because there's tons and tons of great flavors of Celsius, and it seems like they're making new ones almost on a daily basis. But you can have it sent to your place of residence whenever you want. You set it up at your leisure, and just make sure you drink the Celsius energy drinks, the official energy drinks of pewterreport.com.
Now is also a great time to stock up on Celsius. If you go right now on Amazon, they have a lot of different flavors. You can get the regular for $14.98, and then the essentials are $15.98. So great time to stock up during the holidays.
That's right. Absolutely. We have a couple more super chats to get to. Thank you all for patiently waiting. So we will dive into this.
For a track to explode on.
Yes, that's right. Shout out Eminem and 50 Cent. Or is it? Is it 50 Cent featuring
50 Cent
Eminem?
Feat Eminem, yeah.
Yeah, okay, featuring Eminem. Yes, because now remembering, there's a pretty good video on YouTube. It's 50 Cent doing a concert, and he plays Patiently Waiting, and then Eminem comes out, and everyone goes crazy because no one was expecting Eminem to be there. But yes, great song, Patiently Waiting. Redfish, thank you for the $4.99 super chat. Says, people need to quit talking playoffs. We lose this week, and we are not in a great spot. Win this week. Get the magic number down to 1 first. Adam, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, you take it week by week. Todd Bowles has said it before. You take it practice by practice. You take it day by day, week by week. And while you can't look towards the playoffs because you haven't secured a spot yet, I mean, they need to win out still, Matt, really, to control their own destiny. Because should they lose this week in Dallas and win out, and Atlanta wins the rest of their games, I mean, both the teams are at 10 and 7, with the Falcons having the tiebreaker. So the Bucs really need to win this week, and you kind of want to look forward to the playoffs because the Bucs have been playing football deep into January the past few years. You still need to focus on the task in front of you, and that task will be in Dallas on Sunday.
Yeah, I've been trying to stop myself a little bit
Yeah.
too because I do want to start talking about playoffs. But Red Fisher's 100% right. If the Bucs go out and lose again in primetime, remember the Bucs are 0-3 in primetime this year. They lost 2 Monday night games to the Chiefs and the Ravens, and they lost on Thursday Night Football as well to the Falcons, which is why they're kind of in this situation a little bit. But as fun as Baker winning off NFC Offensive Player of the Week, Mike Evans winning the FedEx Air Player of the Week. None of that stuff, man. I mean, I love this picture of the touchdown Mike Evans
Hang
had
it
a couple
up,
years
man.
ago. None of
Such a good
that.
picture.
The Bucs did hang it up. You
Yeah.
can see it in the hallway when you go from the media room to the Bucs locker room. You know what I'm talking about.
Yep.
But all that fun stuff, it all goes away if they don't win against the Cowboys and if they don't win down the stretch. Now, on the other side of it, as much as the Bucs control their own destiny, and they won't if they lose one of these games, there are still multiple and several avenues in which the Bucs can still reach the postseason. Again, the Commanders-Falcons game is going to be crucial to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It's obviously very important for the Bucs to go out and beat the Panthers as well, and that's what you're going to be paying attention to. And I'm actually not sure at the moment if the Commanders and the Falcons are playing at the same time or if they're later or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
But if the Bucs can win against the Cowboys, they will open themselves up so much more room for the wild card as well. And I know you don't want me to say, oh, the Bucs are going to win the wild card because you want them to win the division. I'm just saying there's more room for error because remember, the Bucs have the tiebreaker over the Commanders because they defeated Washington in that first game of the season. And I will reiterate, remember, the Commanders are 9-5, the Bucs are 8-6. So there's a 1-game difference. But if they end up being tied, the Bucs will be in over the Washington Commanders. So with the Commanders playing the Eagles, who are on a big-time winning streak,
Since
scoring
losing
a lot
to
of
the
points.
Bucs.
Yeah, they're beating good teams. They just beat the Steelers. Yeah, it was a home game for the Eagles. But if Washington loses to the Eagles, regardless of what happens to the Falcons, that game the following week is of super, super importance because the Bucs can find a way to gain ground on either one of those teams. Because whoever loses, the Bucs will still pick up a game on them if they were to defeat the Panthers next week. And obviously that comes with the win against the Cowboys this Sunday night. So there's several avenues for the Bucs to keep winning. But yeah, it's a little bit too early, but it's hard not to peek around the corner just a little bit. Virgin Boys with the $4.99 super chat. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Says, do you guys know if Palmer is injured or is he just playing bad? Was at the Chargers game and all I saw was a lot of red. Now that's super cool to see. Hope you had a great time. I'm sure you did with the Bucs scoring 40 points. And, you see it here in Tampa at times because, Tampa is a little bit of a melting pot of a city. You get a lot of Northeastern people, Midwest people as well. So sometimes you'll see fans from the other team come to Raymond James Stadium. But you also see that a lot in L.A. where, Los Angeles, they love the Lakers in basketball and they love the Dodgers, but they're not exactly diehard for some of their other teams. And I get it. Like the Chargers were in San Diego for a long time. The Rams were in St. Louis for quite a while, where they had that Super Bowl winning team with Kurt Warner. So a lot of times when the Chargers and Rams have home games, you see a lot of fans from the other team go to those games. And it seems like that was the case for the Bucs, which is awesome, especially when they play that well. I think something about Baker being back in LA and Liam Cohen as well.
That's true.
Helped into that situation. But your thoughts about Trey Palmer? Trey Palmer's not injured. He's just not getting a lot of playing time.
Yeah, when you look at the receiving room, really since Mike Evans has been back, it's been Evans, McMillan breaking out as that number 2 wide receiver. You still have Sterling Shepard on hand. That's kind of the big 3 right now in the wide receiver room. And it's really left Trey Palmer on the outside looking in. And when you look at Palmer, yes, he has a 4.33 speed. The Bucs drafted him because of that and just his big year that he had at Nebraska, his last season there, you're kind of expecting him to maybe be a number 3 or a number 4, but he's kind of just been a guy since being drafted. He had a nice rookie year for the 6th round production, but he really hasn't improved. Kind of from what we've seen during training camp, even in the preseason. What is your assessment?
Yeah, it's a tough one. Liam Cohen knows how to utilize players, and Trey Palmer specifically, more than I do. I think what's frustrating with Trey Palmer, and he's a guy that got playing time, like, when Mike was out and Chris has been out, and Jalen McMillan too. Let's not forget, like, he missed a handful of games this year with the hamstring injury, and you wanted Trey Palmer to step up. I think maybe it's more of Cohen's offense style, which has been great. I'm not critiquing the Bucs how they run things, because they're averaging almost 30 points per game and they just scored 40 points. But Trey Palmer, his skill set is to take the top off of a defense, go down the field, utilize your speed. He's not exactly the most polished of route runners.
Yeah.
He's not always going to win his one-on-one matchups unless it's just, hey, do a go route down the field. We saw the Bucs take a little bit of a shot, and it ended up being the second touchdown for Mike Evans, but you're not seeing that consistently. Now, the Bucs don't need it because they're running the football great. They're getting a lot of yards after the catch. Mike Evans is getting open. Guys are getting open, and they're fine, and Baker Mayfield's playing well. But remember, when Trey Palmer was drafted, it was the Dave Canales style of offense, which is body blow, body blow, body blow. Then the deep
big shot.
And that kind of played into the hands of Trey Palmer a little bit more. So I think they're trying to find a role for him. I think Baker's trust in Sterling Shepard played a big role in this, because Shepard's been the guy going in motion a lot. And Mike goes in motion too. Chris Godwin was going in motion. But when they would do, and we see all the fake runs and not even fake runs, just misdirection and stuff like that. But when they go to do an end around, they do it with Sterling Shepard. They also fake it with Sterling Shepard. And I just have a feeling if Sterling Shepard wasn't there, but they brought him in for a reason, and I'm happy Sterling Shepard is a member of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. My initial thought is that the guy that would be the quote-unquote motion guy after Jalen McMillan, who they have done an end around with before, that maybe Trey Palmer would be that dude, getting the end around and those type of things. But because the Bucs aren't taking crazy deep shots, because they're not just relying on Trey Palmer's speed, he's not exactly getting the targets and stuff because it's not best suited to his skill set. Now, overall, that's fine. The Bucs are finding plenty of other ways to work, and Trey Palmer was a 4th seed in general.
Yeah.
And I think that's why they stuck him on punt return as well. And he had a pretty good punt return on last week. Got about 10 yards. I thought he was going to be tackled immediately as well. But him waking up pissed off, him waking up pissed off hasn't totally worked. I still kind of want to see Cameron Johnson, now that he's back from injured reserve. I want to see him as either a gadget player or to be the punt return guy. But I don't know. It's just not fitting for Trey Palmer right now. I think he's an okay depth piece, but it's a luxury of riches right now for the Bucs.
Yeah, and when you kind of look at Palmer and the training camp that he had, I remember when we were in Jacksonville, and it kind of seemed like he was struggling dropping passes, and I think that's something that's kind of bit him a little bit, and maybe I don't know if it's put him in the doghouse, but maybe it's put him down a peg. Because when you have somebody like Sterling Shepard, right, who has a track record of success, he comes in off the practice squad, and he's able to just make an impact. And you mentioned kind of play that motion role, has a familiarity with Baker. That kind of, I think, holds more like win now mode than Palmer, who just really hasn't shown it.
Yeah, I would say at this point, Trey Palmer's more of just, an insurance policy more than anything else. And speaking of insurance, we are happy to talk about our friends over at Brier Greaves, a new sponsor, actually used to sponsor with Pewter Report, and now we have them back on board. So shout out to Brier Greaves. If you're a longtime podcast listener, you probably remember the late, great Mark Cook talking about Brier Greaves Insurance. And Pewter Report's Scott Reynolds has been a Brier Greaves customer for years, and there simply is not a better insurance company in the Tampa Bay area. So visit briergreavesinsurance.com to see for yourself. That's Brier Greaves Insurance. Brian Greaves is a family-owned business, and their main goal is helping people. They want to help people find the right insurance policy for you and your family, whether it's home or auto, boating insurance, or business insurance. Turn to Brier Greaves and find out why their personal touch and customer service sets them apart. The days of waiting on hold to speak with an insurance representative that you don't even know are over. With Brier Greaves Insurance, you'll have a relationship with your agent who can answer your questions and advise you on the best policies. As 2 recent hurricanes have shown all of us that live in the Tampa Bay area, there is a cost to living in paradise. Brier Greaves can help make sure you have the right hurricane and flood insurance to make sure you and your home are protected. And we all know how important that is, especially when we are in hurricane season. So visit briergreavesinsurance.com today. That's Brier, B-R-I-E-R. I'll say that again. Brier, B-R-I-E-R, Greaves, G-R-I-E-V-E-S, Brier Greaves. Greaves, one more time, is G-R-I-E-V-E-S. Or call their office today at 813-876-4166. That's briergreavesinsurance.com. Give them a call at 813-876-4166. Tell them that Pewter Report sent you. So thank you to our friends over at Brier Greaves. Got a couple more super chats to get to. Let's start with KGH for life.
Thank you
for the $5 super chat, who says there's no excuse for the Bucs not to score at least 30 points against the Cowboys defense. Now, is that because of the struggles of the Dallas Cowboys, or is that because of how good the Bucs offense has been? What do you think, Adam?
I think it's more about how good the Bucs offense has been just this season in general. They've been very consistent. You take out the Broncos game where they scored 7 points. I mean, they've scored over 20 every single game this year. They put up 40 on the number 1 scoring defense in the NFL. There's just so much talent there. And when you look at the Cowboys defense, it's kind of like Humpty Dumpty. They've pieced it back together, and they're hoping it sticks and it doesn't fall over the wall again, because they have like DeMarvion Overshown out for the year. Trayvon Diggs out for the year. DeMarcus Lawrence, he isn't coming back anytime soon. It's Micah Parsons, Eric Kendricks. Deron Bland is back, and that could be an interesting thing because he's played 4 games this year. He doesn't have an interception. Last year, he had 9 interceptions.
Yeah.
And pretty much every one I remember watching, it was a pick 6. Like, he just took every single one to the house. It was outrageous. But the Bucs offense still, they hold the talent advantage. They hold the schematic advantage, and I think that'll translate on Sunday.
That is true. Bland, he had like 1,000 touchdowns last season and was able to take the ball away. And I don't think the Bucs should get into this pattern, but we've seen they can turn the ball over several times and still pull away from teams. You know, like they had 3 turnovers in the second quarter alone. And then once they got a 2-score lead, the Raiders could not hang with them. They had 2 turnovers on 4 plays against the LA Chargers. And the Chargers could not hang with them in the second half once the Bucs figured out what they need to do on offense. I think it's a similar case for the Bucs against the Dallas Cowboys. If you get a 3-possession lead, the Cowboys aren't coming back.
No.
The Cowboys are not coming back, and part of that is, you know, an improved Bucs defense. I still want them to figure out what's going on at edge rusher, but I mean, if they're getting the pressure that they're getting from Kalijah Kancey and Vita Vea, or even Levante David with the blitzes he's had, and Kalijah Kancey mentioned something funny today. He said when they were coming back from LA, him and Vita Vea and Levante were on the plane, and they were trying to get a bet going on who's going to have the most sacks because They're all up there leading the team. I think this Bucs defense isn't a top 10 defense, but it's not the group that gave up 500 passing yards to Kirk Cousins of all people. So I think the Bucs have found the nice groove of, hey, let the offense do their thing, let them be the catalyst. Defense, just don't mess it up. Don't do anything too out of control. Don't allow the big plays. If they're going to dink and dunk you, only allow it to a certain degree. And that's kind of been their recipe for success over, this 4-game winning streak.
Yeah, and I think before the season we were talking about the Bucs run game because it finished the previous 2 years dead last, and we're like, hey, if the Bucs run game could go from dead last to middle of the pack, the Bucs would be in a great place. I think you can kind of make the same comparison when you look at the Bucs defense. Don't be dead last, but if they're average and the offense is doing what it's been doing all season, again, this is a very good, you can almost say complete team, right? Because the defense, they've been kind of coming around. The past 4 weeks, they've only given up 15 points a game. And they've gotten production from a lot of guys that they were just on the practice squad or other teams signed them. In Kayvon Merriweather's case, to their practice squad. And Kayvon Merriweather, for example, had a sack against the Raiders, had a fumble recovery against the Chargers. They signed Ryan Neal off the street, and hey, he made a really good, almost touchdown-saving tackle against the Chargers. So just their ability to really play better football, I think Todd Bowles mentioned it today, and they took the bye week to really prepare and understand how to use their guys in ways to be successful. And you saw that against the Chargers. That meant playing a 6-1 front when they had a 285-pound tight end, 300-pound fullback out there. So defense is really coming along. Pair that with the offense. I think you're going to see a lot of success going into Sunday if they can hold Micah Parsons and CeeDee Lamb to not having big games.
I respect Todd Bowles coming up with like completely different looks and formations to kind of curtail the biggest weaknesses of their defense. And let's remember, Mike Edwards may be returning at safety this week. The Bucs had a walkthrough today, so like Edwards was out there, KJ Britt was out there, but everyone's just kind of standing around. Obviously keeping everyone healthy or as healthy as possible because besides the Detroit Lions, not many other teams have really had the injury bug the way that
Detroit Lions are beat up.
They really are. Carlton Davis just went on injury reserve, so feel bad for him. And David Montgomery as well, I believe, is out for the year. So, yeah, they're pretty banged up. But nonetheless, we'll see. The injury report, I don't think, has come out yet, so probably won't be there until after this episode. Eric Moreno, thank you for the $5 super chat, says, good afternoon, Matt and Adam. Go Bucs. All I want for Christmas is a Bucs win versus the Cowboys and Panthers. Could clinch a win in the next two if the Falcons lose next week. Yeah, I think a lot of Bucs fans are going to be wishing for that Week 18 game against the Saints to, I don't want to say not be meaningful because I think the playoff seeding is still very important. I think it would be good for the Bucs to get that 3 seed versus being the 4 seed. But I think a lot of every Bucs fan wants the scenario where the Bucs are going into that game knowing that they're the NFC South division champs, and then it's just a matter of seeding and just as importantly, getting Mike Evans 1,000 receiving yards, which is still very much on the table.
Yeah, and it's very much on Baker's mind, too. He said today that it's more on his mind than on Mike's mind. And thank you for the super chat, Eric. You also mentioned all you want for Christmas. The Bucs today, they kind of had some fun talking about their favorite Christmas gifts. Baker, he mentioned it was a Nerf gun that he got.
Yeah.
And Zion McCollum, he had a funny one, too. I don't know if you saw, he got a PlayStation for Christmas, him and his twin brother, Tristan. And he thought it was just a station where you play and like in the corner of a room and ended up being a PlayStation to play Madden on. So I thought it was pretty funny and just kind of looking ahead to Christmas. I'm sure that's going to be a stocking stuffer as Bucs fans wishing for a win.
Yeah, a couple of NFL games on Christmas as well. And clearly the McCollum family, way more giving than the Charlotte Hornets with their PlayStations. Anyway, for those thinking about what to do for the Bucs game, remember it is a Sunday night game. It's a primetime game, so you're going to have all day to watch the 1 o'clock games, the 4 o'clock games. If I had a recommendation, I'd say go out to Walk-Ons and watch all of the football and then watch the Bucs game.
What an amazing comeback, Coach.
You're not kidding. I mean, we did lose the game badly, but coming to Walk-Ons afterward, the team got a much-needed win off the field.
Walk-Ons for the win.
That's right. Walk-Ons has happy hour every single day of the business week. Tuesdays, you got it all day. You can still go today. They have it from 3 to 6 and then from 9 until close. Same time of 3 to 6 on Thursday and Friday as well. Tons of great deals. The $3.99 domestic pints, $4 house wines. Starters are very inexpensive. The Boom Boom Shrimp, queso dip, boneless wings. Can't go wrong with any of the options at Walk-Ons. We actually just had our Pewter Report Christmas party there last Friday and all had a fantastic time. And then on the weekends, their game day specials. You heard me talk about watching the NFL afternoon games on the weekend. You could do that on Saturdays and Sundays. They have pints of $4.49 and 22 ounces for $5.99 of Michelob Ultra, Bud Light, and Budweiser. You can also get $5 Heineken Silvers and $5 Neutrals. There are 3 Walk-Ons in the Tampa Bay area, one over in Lakeland, another in Wesley Chapel, and another in Midtown, pretty close to Raymond James Stadium. So check out Walk-Ons, have a great meal, even better drinks in one of their 3 locations, and enjoy a great time.
Matt,
Before we wrap up the show, go ahead.
Your recommendation? Brian's comment here.
Brian S. says, Matt's recommendations is Walk-Ons. Mine is take Monday through Wednesday off at minimum this week. Victory Monday, Victory Christmas Eve, and Victory Christmas. Yeah, the more victory, the better. I'm all for it.
Had quite a few Victory Monday podcasts now recently. It's been 4 in a row. Will it be 5?
Yeah, and it would be cool to say eventually 7 Victory Mondays in a row with all the success the Bucs have had recently. Just want to get to a couple of comments before we close out the show. Where did I lose my spot? There we go. What says Baker's contract has been great? Yeah, it feels like a steal at this
Especially
point.
compared to Kirk Cousins.
Yes, and Derek Carr. Let's not forget
Yeah.
the bad contract that the Saints gave Derek Carr as well. Bry said, Bucs are also road warriors, and the Cowboys only have 1 win at home. That is correct.
1-6. Yeah.
Yeah, and they beat the Giants, I believe, on Thanksgiving was their lone win at home. So Cowboys are not good in Dallas. Could see a good amount of Bucs fans there as well. And Bucket and Pewter Report YouTube channel member says, J-Mac breaking out late in his rookie year reminds me of Godwin. And I think it's gotten a little underrated because Mike had a huge game and Baker and everyone loves Bucky. But Jalen McMillan over the last 2 games, I think has unlocked a new level for the Bucs offense and why it's looked so good.
Yeah, he set a career high with 4 catches for 59 yards against the Raiders. And it was like, hey, I'm going to do one better. 5 catches for 75 yards. You add in 3 touchdowns over the past 2 games. He's really emerged and kind of been a consistent playmaker. And you didn't really see that throughout the first stretch of the season, him only making 1 catch here and there, kind of making spot plays. Now he's making consistent plays, and that's huge for the Bucs offense.
It has been. There's no doubt about it. You heard me mention our Pewter Report YouTube channel members before. Let's give a specific shout out and a thank you to our Pewter Platinum members, Scott Federico, Rathel Gordon, Noah Parr, Scotty J, Dave Anderson, Eric McMillan, and Zach Jarvis. Thank you all for your support of pewterreport.com. Just a reminder, tomorrow we have another show coming up. Scott Reynolds will be back on as we are joined by Rick Zoyce as well. That topic will be, can the Bucs offense score at will in Dallas, featuring Rick Zoyce. Rick's been on the show before. He's a Cowboys aficionado and expert, so we'll get his thoughts about the Bucs' upcoming opponents. And, of course, we have the Pewter pregame show coming up on Sunday at 9 a.m. We'll preview it, look at some individual matchups in the Pewter Game Day show with myself And Josh Capo will be at 8:20 on our YouTube channel. We'll give our live reactions and analysis to everything going on in the game. But that's going to do it for us on today's episode. For Adam Slavon, I'm Matt Matera saying thanks everybody for watching. We'll see you tomorrow for another edition of the Pewter Report podcast. Out.